Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen, believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's going to make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's going to win that inch. And I know if I'm going to have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. There's 6 inches in front of your face. Now I can't make you do it. You got to look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now I think you're going to see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're going to see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. That's the team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals.
Ideas are bulletproof.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It is February 3rd, 2012. This is another live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. Tonight, the first hour, I have a special treat for you guys. As I promised earlier in the week, I'm going to be playing Mae Brussell for you tonight for the first couple segments of the show. And second hour, my buddy Joe Joseph and my other friend Tim Watts are going to sit in for me because I have to go take care of something that came up about 2 hours ago. It's I have to take it's a little medical issue. I have to go down to the VA Medical Center and take care of, and if I don't, it could become a larger problem, which would stop me from being able to do my show. So in order to nip that in the bud and take care of it, I have to go bounce out my second hour. But Joe and Tim have been gracious enough to sit in for me tonight. But you have me all to yourselves, hour number 1. So again, I wanted to at least stay around for the first hour for you guys because I did promise you earlier in the week that I would broadcast Mae Brussell. And I am a man of my word, even if it means waiting a few extra hours to take care of some stuff. So I kind of wish I could have found out about this a little earlier today, but you know that's how life goes, right? Murphy's Law. So not a big deal. It's the way it works. Okay. One other thing I wanted to get into before I get on to Mae Brussell. I wanted to just talk about to the conservatives really quick. The quote-unquote conservatives, we'll say, the libertarians, whatever, who listen to the mainstream media, especially, you know, Hannity and Fox News and all them. I don't know how many times I've explained to you that you should not listen to that garbage. I don't care if you tell me you use it for, background noise just while you're working. You can put on any other alternative media there's alternative like TV stations. You know, Jones does his thing. Dan Dix over at Press for Truth just started his own little thing going there. Again, you have Orion, which we have, 24 hours of broadcasting. There's always the stream going. So tune that in. You got to stop believing this Fox News crap, because I'm tired of arguing with people over the same point 15 times. Or I post something and somebody I know who's a quote unquote conservative, and there's a few people that do this. It's, oh, but Romney's just trying to say this, or Gingrich was just trying to say this. Stop defending these people. They don't care about you. So stop defending them. This need to like pamper them and protect them from criticism is really pathetic. Stop it. You're all better than that. You're smarter than that. And it's really pathetic that you're buying into this crap. Just really pisses me off, and I wanted to get into that, and I wanted to cover that tonight before I went too far on anything else. Now, you all might ask me who Mae Brussell is. Popeye, who's Mae Brussell? Who is she? And she was this old school broadcaster who, in fact, she started, I believe it was in the late 60s. She was on air for over 25 years between being on AM, and then she had to take some time off because she got death threats and some other stuff. So she did tapes, and she would do audio tapes, and kind of like Cooper used to do, and she would send them around. And I mean, this woman was, 1963 is when she started researching. The day Kennedy got shot is what sent her, into this research mode. And, she was just a housewife. And it was like in 1964, she bought the Warren Commission report, and that just kind of led it down the path. And she started doing what any responsible citizen should do, the things that we're doing today. And, she's a pioneer as far as I'm concerned. I mean, she's amazing. Any researcher, and many, many researchers, know who she is. Some people I found may not know who she is, but a lot of people know who she is. Tim Watts, you'll probably hear him second hour talking about a comment here or there about the stuff I'm going to play from Mae. He knows who she was. She's just an incredible, incredible lady. So pioneer, as far as I'm concerned, because it was incredible. This was beyond her time. So she covered everything from Martin Luther King, the RFK's assassination, to the JFK assassination, to Jonestown. She talked about Jonestown being a mind control experiment a year before it went south, and before they killed that senator that went down there. A year before. So I've been uploading her archives to Federal Jack Tube 6, my YouTube channel, and you guys can check them out there. Amazing stuff. It would be cool to bring her back to the airwaves. So I'm doing so tonight. And, I would really appreciate if you guys want to support Mae, okay, go over to MaeBrussell.com. It's MaeBrussell.com. MaeBrussell.com. Go check it out, and you can get the entire 700 hours, over 700 hours of her archives, full broadcast from the first one to the last one, every one she ever did, on DVDs. They have them there, $60. 25 years of broadcast for like $60. You can't beat that. Archive it, save it. MaeBrussell.com, and go donate to them. I mean, they're archiving this stuff, and they let us, they have no problem with researchers putting it out there and stuff. So support these guys, because, they don't, it's not like they go out there and people pay them to do this. They don't have people beating the door down to line up to try to help them archive this stuff. So, and you get a deal out of it too, because you're supporting them. Plus you get, 25 years worth of broadcasts. You can't beat that. I'm sorry, you can't beat that. No, they didn't pay me to say this. I'm like, as always, when I give out an endorsement, it's because it's from the heart. It's because I believe in it. So I'm telling you, MaeBrussell.com. And you can get the whole thing. It's just this massive archive. We're going to be going to break in about a minute and a half. So on the other side, when we come back, what I'll do is I'll get into the clip because I don't want to start playing it and have her pick up and start talking, and then you're not going to be able to, we'll go to break. But I want to let coming right back in. I'm not even going to talk. Just as soon as the bumper ends, I'm going to start playing Mae's show for you. It's incredible, and the episode you guys are going to hear is from December 11th, 1977. December 11th, 1977. I was about a year old. That's what I tell myself to cope with and deal. Try to convince myself these several years. It's titled The Pentagon Destruction of JFK Evidence. You're going to hear her talking about the murders of JFK the assassination witnesses and other things and other people involved. So pay attention, get your pencils and papers, take notes. Again, MaeBrussell.com, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back.
It's time once again for Dialogue Conspiracy with Mae Brussell. For the past 14 years, Mae has been researching and uncovering facts and evidence from between the lines of the news and placing them in a more thorough perspective of how conspiracy, political assassination, and abuses of power affect us all. Dialogue Conspiracy originates with KLRB-FM in Carmel, California. And now, Mae Brussell.
Good evening. This is Mae Brussell in Carmel, California. It's Dialogue Conspiracy number 298, and it's December the 11th, 1977. Back on Dialogue Conspiracy in April of this year, April the 4th, 1977, I talked about George de Mohrenschildt, a man whose name has been in the news ever since his death, his murder, but his name was quieted until the time he was murdered, except for among a very few researchers. I mentioned George de Mohrenschildt because he was missing at that time. He'd been missing for 3 weeks. And I considered him, after many, many years of research into the Kennedy assassination, it's 14 years now, to be the most important witness that would unlock the real story of who killed President John Kennedy. After that show, 1 week later, George de Mohrenschildt was murdered. He had been missing 3 weeks, and then he was murdered. A Dutch journalist by the name of Willem Altmans claimed that de Mohrenschildt told him that Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy, that the assassination involved oil people in Texas and people higher up, and that Lee Harvey Oswald would be cleared of being an accomplice in this murder of the President of the United States. Altman expected a reception by the House Select Committee investigating assassinations with this kind of information, but they tried to discredit him and they gave him a cold shoulder. As a result, he went to national television. He was on the Good Morning America show. And he also gave the name of the prime witness that he had, George de Mohrenschildt, for the connecting links of the assassination, who ordered the assassination. And he presented this to Gerald Ford. He had a meeting with Gerald Ford, and he wanted to give it to Jimmy Carter to tell how the assassination of President John Kennedy was planned. And his information had to do with Allen Dulles and the CIA and the people that Allen Dulles worked for. De Mohrenschildt was, as I say, was dead a week after the original show that I did, April 4th, 1977. He was killed. And then afterwards, they continued the news media and the assassination committees in Washington, the Assassination Information Bureau, and the House Select Committee have played down the role of Willem Altmans and the story of George de Mohrenschildt. Now, what Mr. Altman said on national TV and Good Morning America was that he had this secret witness who was willing to appear or should appear. And that witness's name was Donald Donaldson, that this person had been working for the government, for the Pentagon, and for high-up officials for many years, from the time of Franklin Roosevelt, that he was known through the various administrations. He had the alias of Dmitry Dimitrov, Jim Adams. He was acquainted with the CIA, and he was well acquainted with the people who planned John Kennedy's assassination. I learned just this last week on Friday from Ted Gandolfo in New York City that Donald Donaldson was found dead. He was murdered December the 7th, and it was in Switzerland. He had 17 bullet holes in his head. This is a shocking piece of information for the very serious researchers because the connecting links of the Pentagon and the Defense Department to the murder of the President of the United States are being systematically wiped out in order to hold the line that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone or acted with a few Cubans. I think they'd settle for Castro or anti-Castro Cubans at this point. It's very murky, but the powers that be do not want this information out, and the primary witnesses are being murdered. Over a year ago, in September 1976, September 17th, I wrote what I called a position paper. It was a 13-page paper, and I had 100 copies made of these 13 pages to send to the House Select Committee and to newspaper people, primary sources of information around the country, and various researchers. And I listed what I considered 12 or 13 suggestions of the way an investigation should go into the various assassinations, specifically the John Kennedy and the Martin Luther King assassinations, because those are the ones that the House Select Committee has mandate to investigate. And I listed the errors, the primary errors of the original Warren Commission. But what I said in that position paper was that, number one, before any work begins by any committee or staff, as they assemble, the very first thing to do was to list all the witnesses who had been killed or missing since November 22nd, 1963. The reason being that once the inquiry would escalate, they would see the pattern of these murders, and the murders would follow. They would be necessary in order to cover up, as the committee in Washington was funded, say $1 million for the first year, maybe another $1 million the second year. As the budget was being allocated and the attorney staff were being selected, it would be necessary to continuously kill the primary witnesses so that the committee there could say they find no evidence of a conspiracy, that James Earl Ray acted alone and Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. When the Senator Church's committee started to investigate the CIA back in 1976, there was an immediate rush of deaths of people directly related to the John Kennedy assassination and the assassination teams of the CIA. One was CIA officer Sheffield Edwards. The other was CIA officer William Harvey, Jimmy Hoffa, who had links to organized crime and the assassination teams that killed the two Kennedys and Reverend Martin Luther King. There was the murder of Sam Giancana, John Rosselli, Charles Nicoletti, Carlos Prios Sequeiros, and George de Mohrenschildt. Three of those happened just within 7 or 8 days apart. Then 2 weeks ago, we had the murder of William Sullivan of FBI counterintelligence, who had full knowledge of the Kennedy assassination and was the primary link of the Pentagon to the CIA and the FBI. That was William Sullivan. Just as at the time of Watergate, the exposures came with the Charles Houston plan to centralize the FBI and the CIA and the Pentagon, it already was working through all of these assassination plots. And William Sullivan was killed. Penn Jones Jr., who specialized on keeping a list of all these deaths and turning us on to them from the very beginning, and has written 4 books on the death of witnesses, primary witnesses to the John Kennedy assassination, and forgive my grief, has a newsletter out now. It's called The Continuing Inquiry. And in his newsletter last issue, he listed 5 other FBI men who have died in the last 6 months that had something to do with the John Kennedy assassination. There were 6, counting William Sullivan, in the last 6 months that had a part of the investigation of the Kennedy assassination. One was Lewis Nichols, 71, who was 71 years old, former number 3 investigator under J. Edgar Hoover, who died of June of 1977. Alan Belmont, 70 years old, of the Warren Commission. He was a witness before the Warren Commission and had a part in that cover-up for the FBI, who followed a few months later, August 77. James C. Cadigan, 60 years old, who was a document expert who testified before the Warren Commission regarding the FBI and about Lee Harvey Oswald, died August 1977. Donald W. Kaler, FBI fingerprint section, a chemist, died in this 6 months time period. J.M. English, who headed the FBI forensics.
All right. I'm going to stop it right there, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll pick it up right where she left off, coming in from the break. MaeBrussell.com. Support her work. We'll be right back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to play the Mae Brussell clip really quick, but I wanted to let you know I got some breaking news about an hour ago, and I forgot to say this the first segment, and hearing Christina do the radiation forecast made me remember this. Remember when I had her on my show recently? I believe it was, I think it was this past Wednesday, if I remember correctly, the 1st. Yeah, so she was on 2 days ago, Wednesday. And I joked with her, and we said, I don't know if I said it on air, but off air, I said, hopefully you won't get another visit or hassled by the police after coming on my show. Well, yesterday, her daughter, again, got hassled by the police. Second time in a row, right after she did my show, day after she does my show, she gets hassled by the police. Does that sound like a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen? Very interesting. So, stay on your toes and pay attention to what she says. Getting back into Mae Brussell. Here we go.
Science Laboratory. He had retired in 1966. He was there in 1964 during the investigation of John Kennedy, and he is dead. And of course, I have accumulated a lot of material hopefully for a book someday on the murder of J. Edgar Hoover, who died May 1st, 1972, of allegedly a heart attack. The District of Columbia coroner, Dr. James L. Luke, said that after examining J. Edgar Hoover's body, the cause of death might have been a heart attack, but that an autopsy was not indicated. This was even though there was a lot of discussion about J. Edgar Hoover not being useful anymore, of blackmailing the White House, of having information on all the occupants, and he was going to be a real thorn in their side. And there was good reason to believe that the Pentagon at that time, with the Houston plan, wanted to take over the FBI. William Sullivan was instrumental in taking the files from Hoover's desk before he died, just shortly before, and putting a lot of them on John Ehrlichman's desk, the aide to Richard Nixon. And Clyde Tolson, J. Edgar Hoover's companion and housemate, was dead in 1975. It's funny that Tolson was not with J. Edgar Hoover the evening that he died, even though they were very close. So you have a rash of FBI murders. You have a connecting link of men from organized crime who worked with the FBI and the CIA on assassination teams. And now the death of this Mr. Donaldson. The death of Donaldson comes the same week that the FBI has released 40,000 pages of documents pertaining to the John Kennedy assassination. And I know a lot of you are expecting me to make comments on these documents, but it's too soon for me to make them. I am in touch with Ted Gandolfo in New York City, who is probably one of the finest researchers in the United States. He has a weekly TV cable show there now every week, and he's having one good witness after the other, authors and researchers on the assassination and writers on his program. He said that he will supply me with these documents. Of course, it's a monumental fee. The copying of them right now is 10 cents a page, which comes to $7,000 or $10,000, and the major news media has access to the documents. It'll be a long time before the individual researchers get their hands on them. But I think it's important to know that as these pieces of information are being put out to the public, it's the same week that the information about the Pentagon's role, or the higher-up role of Alan Dulles, certainly with the military Pentagon making major decisions with the Pentagon, that they are burning their bridges so nobody can connect them to the assassination. There is definitely a power struggle going on, of course, at the upper levels between the Pentagon and the CIA and the FBI. This didn't end with Watergate, and it didn't end with Richard Nixon. And all the agencies are being involved, the Secret Service, the Treasury Department, in these various exposés. But this last week, Jack Anderson had a column, a very innocent-looking column. You might have even passed the information at the bottom of it. It was about the effect of caffeine on the fetus, and that pregnant women should be careful about how much coffee they should take. Then at the very end of that column, this was November 1977, he makes the remark that the Pentagon has just destroyed their John Kennedy files. So that the Kennedy files that exist now in Texas and New Orleans still are not declassified by the FBI. The FBI keeps those. The ones that they've given out, the 40,000 pages of work that they did that is now available for the public, does not even touch probably upon the role of the Pentagon. These were carefully selected, and a lot of it was blocked out, and I'm sure that a lot was destroyed that they didn't want us to see. But the very week that the FBI was turning over their files of the John Kennedy assassination, the very week that Mr. Donaldson was murdered, is the week that the Pentagon has systematically burned or destroyed their John Kennedy files. And yet no outrage by the press, no outrage by the news media. Jack Anderson simply slips it in his column, and knowing the role that Anderson has played with the assassination teams and cover-up artists all of his the times that I've been following closely the last 14 years, I wonder if he simply wrote that column so that he could send a message to the various people who are involved. You don't have to worry, the papers are burned. He certainly couldn't send it with messengers anymore or with carrier pigeons or however these agents send messages back and forth. And I've always linked Jack Anderson to the Defense Intelligence Agency. So just as a byline on a caffeine article, he puts the idea in for you to accept that the Pentagon has destroyed their files. Those files were important. They were important because Lee Harvey Oswald went to the Soviet Union as part of the Marines. He was in the Navy, and he had correspondence with John Connally. Even Marina Oswald was on national television just recently saying that Lee Harvey Oswald had written to John Connally, the Secretary of the Navy at one time, and later he was the governor of Texas, and said that when he came home from Europe, he wanted to work for John Connally, help him campaigning and do his work. That's interesting for an oppressed Marxist person who's gone to the Soviet Union and come home with his Russian wife, that she's saying his next occupation was to be or wanted to be for John Connally. Another researcher who's done work on George de Mohrenschildt and the various areas of cover-up that are coming down now by the major media all across the board is Richard Sprague, not the investigator from Pennsylvania, the one that was supposed to head the committee in Washington, but the other Richard Sprague. This is Richard E. Sprague, who wrote many, many good articles for computer and automation, and now there's another issue. It's a magazine called People in the Pursuit of Truth. It's put out by the same group, but it's not part of a computer magazine anymore. Richard E. Sprague wrote an article for them dated November 15th, 1977, that was just published. And in it, he wrote about George de Mohrenschildt and Mr. Donaldson, and I thought I would read you some pages from this article, because if you don't get the pursuit of truth, you have no access to this information. But to show you how important these people were, this is from Richard Sprague's article. He said, Murder Incorporated of the Power Control Group has killed George de Mohrenschildt at a time when he was too dangerous for him. The media branch of the Power Control Group, which he refers to as the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time, Newsweek, and he lists the powers that keep the information from the people, undertook a big campaign to discredit Willem Altmans and Mr. Altmans from the journalism station NOS TV from Holland, because he was in possession of video and audio tapes of George de Mohrenschildt. The de Mohrenschildt murder so far has been concealed with the help of the media. They portrayed it as a suicide of a man who became insane. De Mohrenschildt was quite sane at the time he disappeared from Belgium. Donald Donaldson, as I say, alias Dmitry Dimitrov, Jim Adams, was acquainted with the CIA and the people who planned JFK's assassination, and he was in contact with Willem Altmans.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up to the break, so I will stop it right there because I do not want the music to cut it off. We got about a minute. So I'm going to end up playing the clip over into the first segment of the first hour. And then after that, I will be giving the reins up to Mr. Joe Joseph and Tim Watts, and they will be closing out the rest of the show for me. So make sure you stay tuned for the second hour, because I will be picking up I'll have enough time between the last segment of the first hour and the second segment to finish the clip, and I want to make sure you guys get to hear the whole thing of what she's talking about, so you hear everything in its full context. As promised, Mae Brussell, back on the air since 1988. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. 3 minutes. Don't go anywhere.
He showed up in Holland to tell his story to NOS TV and to Willem Altmans. He told Altmans that Allen Dulles was the key CIA man in planning the assassination. Now, this is important. Richard Sprague says that Dulles planned it. But Dulles is the attorney and was the attorney, he's deceased now, of Nelson and David Rockefeller of Chase Manhattan Bank. Dulles always represented the large cartels that put Adolf Hitler into power and then went to form our CIA after World War II with his offices over in Switzerland. And he brought over Reinhard Gehlen, Hitler's aide, chief of intelligence of Eastern Division, for a brief visit to the Pentagon and to Monterey, actually, and then back to Germany, where he was put in a villa and he's still alive. Allen Dulles may have made the planning stages, but he also couldn't have the idea. The large corporations, of course, had to be behind the Kennedy assassination. Sprague said Donaldson had been brought to the United States as a double agent during World War II by Franklin Roosevelt. He held back his knowledge of the assassination conspiracy until the Church Committee was formed. He took his information to Senator Church, who brought him to President Ford, rather than have him questioned by the Church or Schweiker Committee or subcommittees. Gerald Ford, Frank Church, and Donaldson had a meeting in which Gerald Ford talked both of them into keeping Donaldson's information under wraps. Now, this was written in November of 1977 by Richard Sprague, and Donaldson was murdered December the 7th, 1977. So Gerald Ford, member of the Warren Commission, who's always worked with Navy intelligence, again, the links of the military to the assassinations, who is on the Warren Commission, who served the CIA all of his years in Congress and as president, sat with Frank Church, who also wanted to run for president of the United States. But Mr. Sprague says that this meeting took place in which Gerald Ford talked them out of giving the information. They talked Mr. Donaldson out of giving this information, and then Donaldson is murdered, and the information is buried with him with just a few pieces left. And Mohrenschildt is dead, and Donaldson is dead. Richard Sprague wrote that when George de Mohrenschildt was killed, then Mr. Donaldson decided it was time to make his information public, and he offered it to the Select Committee in Washington, D.C. He approached Willem Altmans and asking that he keep his identity secret. He told his story. He stayed in Holland at the time that Mr. Altmans tried to reach President Carter. Altman revealed Donaldson's identity on American TV because he thought, I suppose, that it would ensure his life or protect him. And he told that the House Select Committee, run by the biggest crook and cover-up artist since Gerald Warren's commission, Mr. Robert Blakey, he took it to the Select Committee, and Jimmy Carter refused to listen to the story. Gerald Ford, as president, heard it and told Mr. Donaldson to put the wraps on it. Jimmy Carter refused to hear the story from Mr. Donaldson. Donaldson moved to England, and while he was there, he disappeared from a London hotel. Now, Richard Sprague wrote this a month ago, and it just came out. He said he left large unpaid bills at the London and Amsterdam hotels where he was staying, and the possibility is very good he has gone the same route as de Mohrenschildt, murdered by the power control group. And Richard Sprague is absolutely right. He was murdered by the power control group. He went on to say the episode is reminiscent of the de Mohrenschildt affair. I could add to that it's reminiscent of a long series of murders and assassinations, but this is really getting very, very flagrant and scary to think how many witnesses are killed. Mr. Sprague, Richard Sprague, wrote a list of ways the media is covering up the murder of the President of the United States. This is the year 1977, where we have literally hundreds of researchers doing work on the assassinations, and the major media is trying desperately to hold the line. And he cites examples of the barrage of information, and I'm going to share it with you because some of it is very much like the individual programs that we have here on Dialogue Conspiracy. But Richard Sprague has been doing this monumental work since 1970 with his first article in Computer and Automation. And I'll list some of the ways, the components that he says of the 1977 campaign to cover up the investigation of the president's murder. He says there was a book by Bud Fensterwald, who he goes on in his article, if we have time to go into, as being a CIA agent. He's worked for the Power Control Group all of his years in Washington, at least since the Kennedy assassination. And he cites the example of Fensterwald writing a book which has been on the newsstands, and I see it, Safeway supermarkets, bookstores, Bernard Fensterwald's book on the assassination. And Richard Sprague accuses him of leaving out the CIA agents, the key people, all the key people in his book were left out of Fensterwald's book. He said at least 12 people of the CIA were left out. He said it was a clever effort on the part of one of the CIA's best agents to throw people off the track by leaving out at least 12 CIA conspirators and hangers-on that he has files of in his own committee to investigate assassinations that he formed in 1968. These are Richard Case Nagel, William Seymour, Amelia Santano, Manuel Gonzalez, Guy Gabaldon, Mary Hope, he's got Richard Nagel twice, Harry Dean, Ronald, August Inovich, Thomas Beckham, Fred Lee Chrisman, Frenchie, and Jack Lawrence. He cites the TV special, the ABC TV special on Lee Harvey Oswald as a cover-up, the new movie coming out soon by CBS on Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald, a book by Patricia McMillan, who's from the CIA, and he gives examples and information and facts that she's of the CIA, and she worked with Marina Oswald and wrote the book Marina and Lee. There's been a series of TV appearances, Tom Schneider, Dick Cavett, all major shows are having Marina Oswald and Priscilla Johnson on as guests, and nobody is allowed to confront them. The condition of their being on the air is nobody confronts them. Then there was the murder of de Mohrenschildt, the discrediting of William Altman's, and he mentioned the possible murder of General Donald Donaldson, which became a fact just this week, and then an attack by the Select Committee on various researchers, and they're selecting a specific group such as Carl Oglesby, I know, and the Assassination Information Bureau now to be the spokesman for all the researchers, even though they don't have the facts and they cover up as much as Bernard Fensterwald does. They have inherited the cloak of the cover-up back in Washington, D.C. Mark Lane has moved to California and flies back and forth and has literally abandoned his office there at the height of the action. The committee is run by people from the Justice Department, the CIA, and the FBI. The major witnesses are being killed, and the media projects this cover-up. He didn't include Michael Eddowes, the author of the Oswald File, who wrote a terrible book, and it was distributed all over the country to bookstores. I understand some stores didn't even have a choice. It was given to them to sell in large hunks. And this book is another massive cover-up by a man who has to work with the Pentagon, intelligence agencies, who cannot stand up under questioning or interrogation. He was a guest on Ted Gandolfo's show in New York, and Ted really clobbered him with questions. I'm surprised he even showed up. Richard Sprague talked about Lawrence Schiller, who is a member of the Power Control Group, who made that movie, The Trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, for ABC TV. I've talked about Schiller as being the man that was with Jack Ruby when he died, representing, again, the Pentagon, to get a tape recording of Jack Ruby in the hospital, saying there was no conspiracy, where he was fully doped. It was Lawrence Schiller who worked with Gary Gilmore and held a mic to his mouth while he was being electrocuted. They actually took movies of the death, TV movies were made, and they want to make a movie of the death of Gary Gilmore in Utah. This is what Sprague says. He says Schiller is despicable. In addition to being a con artist, a crook, and a liar. How, the reader may ask, can a guy like that become co-producer of a major ABC television show? The answer is simple. He's available to the Power Control Group for attacking the assassination researchers, for ridiculing them, and reinforcing that no conspiracy idea. It goes into the reproduction of that movie, The Trial of Lee Harvey Oswald in Texas, and the way the media played it up. Mr. Sprague lashes into NBC and CBS are planning major TV specials on the assassination. He believes, Richard Sprague does, and I do, and so does Ted Gandolfo, that the media attack, the ABC show, the CBS, the Marina Oswald story, the Michael Eddowes story, are all because the House Select Committee is working there, and they're going to have a complete cover-up of the truth of the assassination, but it will be supported by the media barrage always supporting that lone assassin theory. Another factor of releasing these 40,000 pages of the FBI reports right now is that the headlines continue to say Lee Harvey Oswald killed John Kennedy. There's an example in our local paper here. It says J. Edgar Hoover tagged Oswald as JFK killer 2 hours after the slaying, the files reveal. Now, that doesn't mean Lee Harvey Oswald killed the president, but each generation grows up seeing this over and over in the headlines that Lee Harvey Oswald was the killer. Whether J. Edgar Hoover discovered it 6 months later or 4 months later or 2 hours later isn't the...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, hour one is over. As promised, there's about 5 or 6 minutes left, so I will pick it up in the beginning of hour two, and then I'll be handing the reins over to my good buddy Joe and my good buddy Tim. So stay tuned. May will be back to finish up the first segment of hour two. I will be saying my goodbyes for the evening, and I will be back, I promise, live Sunday. But that's why I have to leave early, because if I don't, I might not be back Sunday. Just kidding. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Hour number two coming up. Don't go anywhere. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number two here on Down the Rabbit Hole. We are live today, February 3rd, 2012. And as promised, I said I would bring in the first segment of the second hour, and I'm going to play the rest of this Mae Brussell clip for you really quick. And then I'll be hanging out for the first segment, and then I have to go. But some news, I wanted to give you guys an update really quick on May. I wanted to tell you something. We're going to be carrying these archived broadcasts here on Orion. We'll let you know within the next, let's say like 2 weeks, when we'll have a better idea of when we're going to be put at what time slot and everything. But we'll be giving May at least an hour. About an hour, at least, I'd say one to two times a week. And we're going to be playing the archived broadcasts here, courtesy of MaeBrussel.com. So, again, please go help them out, MaeBrussel.com. Donate, and in the donation say, thanks for everything you do, whatever. Give them just a quick thanks so they can feel the love a little bit. But because of them, we will be able to bring you, the listeners, archived episodes of Mae Brussell. 25 years worth of work, over 700 hours. So I just thought the listeners would be interested in knowing that. So let me play the rest of this clip really quick. It's a few minutes. Here you go. The last of this clip of May, her December 11th, 1977 episode on the Pentagon destruction of JFK evidence. Here we go.
Point. It's always Oswald the killer. And then the Associated Press says just 2 hours after Kennedy was killed, FBI Director Hoover concluded that Oswald was the assassin, that Oswald was a mean-minded individual in the category of a nut. This was what the declassified letters said, that he called the Attorney General right away within 2 hours and said, I think I know who killed the president in Dallas. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald may be mean-minded. That may be true. I don't know him as a person. I don't think he was a nut, but within 2 hours after the assassination of John Kennedy, J. Edgar Hoover would really have no way of knowing what Lee Harvey Oswald was doing in the Soviet Union, in Minsk, in Moscow. He was with CIA agent Priscilla Johnson there, CIA agent Eileen Mosby, the two journalists from the CIA. He was with John McVicker of the CIA at the embassy. He was with Robert Snyder of the CIA at the American Embassy in Moscow. His contacts were with people from the Pentagon and the CIA. How would J. Edgar Hoover know that Lee Harvey Oswald worked it alone? Oswald had no accumulated bank accounts and no money, and he had gotten himself to Helsinki and then to the Soviet Union on planes that had no time schedule, that had to be private planes or military that flew him in. He gave his passport up at the embassy and then said, I want to come back home, even though he gave them radar stories about our marine activity in the Pacific. The State Department sent him money to come home. It was supposed to be a loan, but I saw no record of when or where he paid it back. How would J. Edgar Hoover know all this? Because he worked with William Sullivan, who was just murdered. And if William Sullivan were alive, he could testify before the committee in Washington, D.C., but that could never happen. If George de Mohrenschildt were alive, he could testify, but that's not going to be allowed to happen. And if Mr. Donaldson were alive, he could testify, and that won't happen. So even though the witnesses died in just dribbles before, say in the last 14 years, they were dying, maybe 100 of them divided by 14 years. But now 1 a week is being killed. And as I say, 6 major FBI people that had something to do with the case have died in the last 6 months. It's going to make it a lot harder to get the truth. And of course, I'm depressed about it. But next year, we'll find more answers. The year will be starting in a couple of weeks. This is Mae Brussell in Carmel, California. I'm sorry to leave you on such a sour note, but it isn't very good news as far as the research goes. I'll see you next week on Dialogue Conspiracy. Keep well and have fun getting those Christmas presents and doing the shopping, and have a good year.
You've been listening to Dialogue Conspiracy with Mae Brussell.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure to be able to bring Mae back from the dead, as it were, for some time tonight. And as I said, we have been in talk with the people that run MaeBrussel.com and who have all the archives. And we want to broadcast them, the archives, for free for everybody. But in order for us to do that, I'd like you guys to do me a favor and just go give them a thanks over there. If you can donate $5, that's cool. Donate $10 and just let them know that you appreciate them having the archives, and you appreciate them being cool about airing them and getting them out for the masses to hear her work, because the message is super important. So support them so that they can continue to do this, and maybe you can even in the future spend $60 if you're going to donate it. If you want to donate a large sum, you don't have to donate. Just purchase the DVDs. They have I think it's like 4 or 5 DVDs, and they throw a couple other things in there too. But they have a bunch of DVDs with like over 25 years of worth of her work. So I urge you to please go check it out. Spend the money; it's worth it. You'd be supporting the movement. And again, it goes to the whole archive thing. I tell people all the time that they should have archives of stuff, books, everything, movies, whatever you can. This would be a good physical archive to have. Mae is gone. She died in 1988. This is not stuff that you can, maybe, whenever, I'll get around to it. I urge you, ladies and gentlemen, please go out and just get the archives for yourself. If anything, if nothing else, do it for yourself, because you never know what's going to happen. And you could keep this stuff in a safe, wherever. And again, CDs are somewhat EMP proof. So it's like having a book. It's like having something physical to touch and be able to hold in your hands. Okay, a tangible piece of history, ladies and gentlemen. Something that, again, you can't erase with, an electronic EMP burst or something like that. All right. We have a few minutes before we go into break. I'm going to bring in Joe and Tim, because they are going to be covering the rest of the show for me tonight. And people have been asking me, Popeye, why are you going? Because you were vague. So I guess I owe it to the listeners. I must have gotten bitten by a spider or something on my elbow this morning, and it's swollen. So I have to go to the ER and I guess get whatever you get for a...
Blah, blah. It was not a spider, Popeye. No, blah.
Well, yeah, right. No, if it was a pirate, I think I would have known that, because he'd be dead on the floor from me popping a cap at that.
That's all right. Lead does not affect me, Popeye. No. You need a silver bullet, yes.
You just need a little Bactine. And
that's all you need, a little Bactine, and Mommy put some Band-Aids on you.
Yeah, I just want some antibiotics or whatever, because this thing's nasty and angry, so...
That's all right, man.
Some sort of tropical Mother Nature critter.
Tim and I don't mind hijacking your show for the last 45 minutes. That's cool. I mean, hey, sometimes it needs to happen. I believe there was a time when you actually had to hijack my show.
Yes, there's been a few times. Well,
That's right,
I think it might be maybe it's a brown recluse bite, and those things never turn out good. That's why I said if you leave it for too long, that really turns bad. So I might as well get it now.
Recluse bites, man, that sucks, because you're going to have a sore there for a long time.
That's why I want to go get it checked out and see what it is, because I noticed it about an hour before I came on air, and I was like, God damn it, it's not one thing, it's another. So, whatever. I do
Well,
live in
that's
the
cool,
tropics, though.
If-
Say again, Tim?
Scorpion?
I say 'tis your lot in life there, bucko.
Ooh, could be a scorpion too. We have scorpions and brown recluse down here. It's the only two things I could think of. So, but they're little black scorpions. They're not like the super deadly ones. They're just but they do F you up if you get stung.
Hey, whatever you do, man, just don't get hit with a palm frond when you go out the door in your eye or anything like that.
Yeah, I know. I guess this is, your wife brings up a good point off air. I guess this is karma for me busting JJ's balls about poking his eye out with palm frond on WTF on Mondays here on Orion.
Right.
So I guess that's what I get for busting people's balls, ladies and gentlemen. I get bit by some sort of tropical creature, whether it's a scorpion or a brown recluse, whatever. So thank you guys for covering the rest of my show. I'm going to go get this checked out so my arm doesn't fall off. And
Take care, Pop.
I appreciate it. Gentlemen, it's been real, it's been fun, and it's been real fun tonight. Make sure you go to maybrussel.com and support their efforts in helping us get the broadcast out to you. I'm out. Thanks, boys.
No sweat, man. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm Joe Joseph, and Tim Watts here. Hijacking Popeye's show. And what are we going to talk about tonight, Tim? There's so many things we could talk about. We could do the right thing and go to federaljack.com and use some of Popeye's content, or we could just talk about his elbow for the next 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And speculate as to what happened to that poor man. Was it really a bionic spider that came and tried to implant something into his elbow? Conspiracy. We'll save that for Sunday. For Sunday.
Sure.
So anyway, folks, you guys have seen the saber rattling with Iran. And this is very interesting, but I kind of feel in a way that what we're seeing, Tim, is distraction. And I don't know what for, but it just doesn't seem to me like this is going to go the way that they plan it. And here's the reason why. You got China and Russia that are backing Iran. And the United States and Israel, they know this, yet they seem to be push. And today, WorldNet Daily, a renowned neocon talking point site, comes out with an article today that says, Iran warns world of coming great event. Says evil hedge money soon will be defeated by the power of Allah. I think that Allah guy's a pretty nice dude. Amid crippling sanctions over its nuclear weapons program, Iran is continuing to prepare itself for war against the West and now is warning of a coming great event. Quote, in light of the realization of the divine promise by Almighty God, the Zionists and the great Satan, America, will soon be defeated. Now that was Ayatollah Khomeini. Khomeini speaks to hundreds of youths. Apparently, there were youths from over 70 countries attending a world conference on Arab Spring and the Great Awakening of Islam. In his remarks, Khomeini advised the youth to remain vigilant, stating that Islamic awakening in the region has delivered several blows to the enemies of Islam, and that all Muslims, despite their own historical and social differences, remain united in opposing the evil hegemony of the Zionists and the Americans. Let me stop here before we go any farther. Why? Why, Tim, is religion used time and time again to divide?
Well, it's a crutch for him, isn't it? You know, and the whole Islam thing really gets me. You know, because when I hear him go after the Muslims and they say Muslim terrorists, I mean, to me, that's probably one of the biggest oxymorons in the world, right up there with military intelligence. Because, you know, Islamic people, you know, the Muslims, they're probably more devout than most Jews and most Catholics and stuff. These guys, absolutely, you know, they take their religion seriously.
No, they most certainly do. And herein lies the thing, Tim. If you go over there, I've said this time and time again, people have perception. They perceive things based on what they're told, not on what they see, because what they see isn't the truth. The mainstream media doesn't tell you what the truth is. The mainstream media tells you what they want you to hear. Remember that it's, 6 corporations, Tim, that own the entire mainstream media?
Yep, 6.
6. So they're going to tell you what you want to know, what they want you to know. Case in point, Libya. Was Libya a bad country? Did they do bad things in the past? Sure. Absolutely. But Gaddafi brought water to the desert. The man was using resources to go ahead and pay for things for the people of Libya. And he was trying to promote Africa to become independent, to use their resources and become independent. And once the Western banksters caught wind of that and said, oh, wow, well, Libya, woof, we can't have that, Now they want to take gold for oil and gold-backed currencies or we can't have that. No. But this time they couldn't do it with America as the face, so they said, well, we'll just send NATO in. We'll go take care of that. Yeah. And then we colluded with the same organization that we claim that are terrorists, that they're our enemies, and we collude with them to take Gaddafi down.
In between both of those, countries, you had Iraq and you had Libya. What was the one common thing between them both, Joe, is that they wanted to get away from the Federal Reserve System. And rule number 1, folks, is thou shalt not opt out of the Federal Reserve System because you're going to get smart bombed. And that's what happened in Iraq. It's what happened in Libya. And now, Iran says, hey, we don't want those Federal Reserve notes. Not a good thing.
Right.
When we attacked Libya, that whole thing was going on, and this is the thing that really stood out to me. Gaddafi is still in power, and they're waging this little war. Yet somehow the powers that be are able to establish a new central bank, which is now in the Rothschild orbit of central banks. How the hell does that happen? I mean, seriously. Gaddafi's still in power. They're able to establish a new central bank, that Gaddafi didn't sanction, and they were able to nationalize another oil company that supposedly the powers that be control. I mean, how does that happen when they haven't toppled the country yet?
I don't know, man.
The impetus was going into that,
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. So, folks, just remember that things don't normally – what you see in the media isn't normally what is true. So just remember that. If you go over there, go to Iran. And I guarantee you that it will astound you as to who they are and what they believe in, and talk to the people on the street. It would be the same as if you talk to people here on the street. Same stuff. Same stuff.
They're probably more educated, though.
I'm sure they are. And let me tell you something, Tim. They're showing some tremendous restraint, considering what they're up against.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, huge.
These, a lot of these people have been oppressed for years, and so they think on their own. They don't trust the government. They don't trust their media and stuff. But that's our problem here in America. Now, granted, a lot of people say they don't trust their government, but for crying out loud, it's like, step away from the mainstream media, folks. Step away and start looking somewhere else, because that's how we're dumbed down here. And that's why I say they're probably better off over there in a lot of other foreign countries, because they don't trust their media. These people are already awake.
That's right. And this has gone on for over 100 years. These elitists that think that they can control us, and for the most part they have, only because the American people and the people of the world as a whole have really been asleep at the wheel for far too long. But, the tide is changing. The thing is I want to highlight exactly what these people think of us. I want to highlight that. And since this is Popeye's show, we're going to do that. When we come back, I'm going to talk about Margaret Sanger and What She Talks. She's the founder of Planned Parenthood. And I'm going to give you some of the quotes. This is her own words. So when we come back, we'll talk Margaret Sanger and see what she thought about you. You're listening to Down the Rabbit Hole on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Don't go away.
All my real patriots stand up and say 9/11 was an inside job. They died scared.
Wow, Bon Jovi, man. I tell you what, I haven't heard that song in forever. That rocks. Welcome back, folks. You know, it's funny. The rad chick came on during the break, and she got harassed. Her daughter got harassed again, and wouldn't you know it, it always happens after Popeye has her on the show, that she gets harassed by the police or something like that. So just some interesting thing to note, folks. We're talking about Margaret Sanger. Now, Margaret Sanger is the founder of Planned Parenthood. She's also the editor, or was the editor, of the Birth Control Review from 1917 to 1938. That's a publication that I'm sure I would love to subscribe to. Can you imagine that? It'd be like, I can't even equate it to anything. I can't believe there was a publication like that, the Birth Control Review. So anyway, her biography goes into a lot of views that she had on things. And I'm going to read a couple of those. You know, on page 194, Sanger admitted that her entire life's purpose was to promote birth control. That's quite a noble purpose. I mean, really? That's what you live for? Is to promote birth control? She got to loosen up a little bit. Loosen up. She helped to establish the research bureau that financed the pill. She contributed toward the work of the German doctor who developed the IUD. Isn't that interesting? And Sanger espoused the thinking of eugenicists, similar to Darwin's survival of the fittest, but related the concept to human society, saying that the genetic makeup of the poor and minorities, for example, was inferior. Oh, does that ring a bell to anything, Tim?
This woman's got some radical beliefs, that's for sure. I mean, she talks about, eradication of blacks, of the mentally ill, of bad stocks, so to speak. You know, it's like...
Absolutely.
One would think she was probably KKK or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I would think so. Or at the very least, I mean, I could see the Nazis probably taking a play or two out of her book. You know, on blacks, immigrants, and indignates. Human weeds, reckless breeders, spawning. Human beings who never should have been born. I mean, this is crazy. And to be quite honest with you folks, I didn't know much about Margaret Sanger until Popeye talked to me about her, and I did a little research. I mean, this woman is just totally off her rocker. I mean, I can't even describe it. Can't even describe it. On the right of the handicapped and mentally ill and racial minorities, she's more children from the fit, less from the unfit. That is the chief aim of birth control. I mean, unbelievable. And so
you have the idea couldn't have been too religious, you know.
No, of course. Well, maybe, but just down the wrong path, if you will. Probably a Moloch worshiper. I wonder if he was at Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, that's probably more up her alley.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. You know? Oh, on religious convictions regarding sex outside of marriage. This book aims to answer the needs expressed in thousands on thousands of letters to me in the solution of marriage problems. Knowledge of sex, truths frankly and plainly presented, cannot possibly injure health, normal young minds. Concealment, suppression, futile attempts to veil the unveilable. These work injury as they seldom succeed and only render those who indulge them in indulge in them ridiculous. For myself, I have confidence in the cleanliness, the open-mindedness, and the promise of the younger generation. So I guess what she's saying there is, be fruitful and multiply, but don't. Yeah. I mean, definitely, this lady's off her rocker. But you can see this is from 100 years ago. This stuff has been going on for a very, 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 very long time. And I've said it on my show, and I'll say it on Popeye's show. If there's anything that these people are, they are patient. When they get this plan concocted, when they did, they knew that this stuff couldn't happen overnight, that it would take a long time. It would take a long time.
And here's one quote that just, my gosh, you read it, it's just chilling. It says, the most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. For crying out loud. Who says stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't know. But at any rate, you can see where these elitist scumbags that are promoting wars with Iran and invading countries, regardless of them being sovereign nations, you can see where they get this from. And what bothers me and troubles me, Tim, is the fact that they subscribe to it. They actually believe in this kind of stuff. I mean, where's the humanity?
None that I see. She's real big on womanhood, and that's very good, women's rights, but she kind of skews it in a really warped manner here. She talks about the marriage bed being the most degenerating thing, in a relationship, and women shouldn't be just childbearing machines, and this woman is just like totally against procreation.
That's just one thing. Now, speaking of this other, when we talk about conspiracy, that's most certainly a conspiracy, wouldn't you say, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about another conspiracy. And I don't know where this is leading, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. This is an article from the Intel Hub. But, Tim, you remember all those strange sounds. I mean, we covered it pretty extensively on our show.
Yeah.
Well, Intel Hub wrote an article, Strange Sounds Proven by Scientists, Massive Effort to Cover It Up. And it says, an accredited and renowned scientist, Dr. Elchin Kalivalov, I can't even say its name, sorry, has confirmed the strange sounds are not just a hoax and offers some solid explanations. And this doctor is a geophysicist who works in the area of geodynamics and geotectonics. Basically, he studies the way the plates of the Earth move. And in a recent interview from GeoChange Journal, this scientist was asked some questions about the strange sounds people have been hearing over the past few months. So I'll call him Dr. K since I can't. Dr. Kalilov. We have analyzed records of these sounds and found that most of their spectrum lies within infrasound range, i.e., is not audible to humans. What people hear is only a small fraction of the actual power of these sounds. They are low-frequency acoustic emissions in the range between 20 and 100 hertz, modulated by ultra-low infrasonic waves from 0.1 to 15 hertz. Interesting, isn't it? In geophysics, they are called acoustic gravity waves. They're formed in the upper atmosphere, at the atmosphere-ionosphere boundary in particular. There can be quite a lot of causes why those waves are generated. Earthquakes, volcano eruptions, hurricanes, storms, tsunamis. However, the scale of the observed humming sound in terms of both the area covered and its power far exceeds those that can be generated by the above-mentioned phenomenon. Isn't that interesting, Tim? And look at the frequency that's being generated.
I'm not so sure I buy all of that, because when we listen to that, there's three very distinct sounds there, especially the one that sounds like the slamming doors, which, I don't know. I'd have to look into that a whole lot more because why haven't we heard this before? It hasn't manifested itself any other time that we know.
Well, I have done some research into that, and I can tell you that that harp does certain things, and if it's radiated at a certain frequency, it'll make certain sounds. They can manipulate it to sound different ways. So it depends, and it also depends on what it's hitting and how it resonates. So I mean, it's not something that can be just a generic sound. Folks, we'll be right back. Final segment coming up. You're listening to Down the Rabbit Hole. Don't go away. Welcome back, folks. Don't forget to visit federaljack.com. Man, Popeye puts up a ton of interesting stuff. That federaljack.com is like a repository of all that's going to make you just totally depressed and want to just kind of get in the fetal position and suck your thumb for a while.
That Margaret Sanger piece was out there. I mean, holy cow.
I mean, seriously out there. There's some crazy, whacked out people. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, she's one of them that takes the cake, Honest to God, I mean, on adultery, a woman's physical satisfaction was more important than any marriage vow. Really?
Like I say, she's not going to be embraced by the church too quickly.
The marriage bed is the most degenerating influence in the social order. I mean, so she's saying, let me get this straight, because I'm just trying to wrap my arms around this. And the reason why I'm going back to here, folks, is because I keep getting drawn back to this article, and it's just it's unbelievable, some of the crap she's saying. So basically what she's saying is her whole life is devoted to birth control. But she wants everybody to screw like rabbits because it's all for the pleasure of the woman. That's what it's all about. So it's not for out of love and affection and, because that spousal stuff, that's for the birds, What she wants is just love, peace, and harmony to abound, but don't get pregnant. And if you do, don't worry. We've got a hanger for you. Because at that time, I think, if I remember right, abortion was illegal.
Perhaps if her parents would have thought about Planned Parenthood, we wouldn't have had to put up with her crap.
Yeah, and what just astounds me, Tim, is that people actually listen to her. That there's I can't believe it. The school's named after her.
Now that's an aberration right there.
You think?
The whole eugenics thing is I tell you, that's just one sordid topic. We talked about this, on Freedom Link show, and they try to say it's about population control, and it's just not. There's enough room in the state of Texas for everybody in the United States to live and have a half an acre of land. There's enough room in this world for all of us, folks. I mean, we're at 7 billion people right now. The whole gist of it is we've become an unruly mob to the powers that be. I mean, my opinion, but that's the only thing I see, because there's plenty of food. I mean, we throw away how much food in this world? I mean, for crying out loud, we don't have to have anybody hungry in this world. We have plenty of food. We have plenty of land. It's just that we've become too many, for these people to handle, and they want us down to a manageable number. That's it.
The federal government, Tim, they pay farmers in some aspects to not farm their land.
Oh, sure. In Iowa, they do it all the time. You bet.
I mean, holy crap, dude. All for what? Oh, we can't depress the prices too much. Oh, no. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's totally crazy, and to be quite honest with you, this whole thing, none of this has to happen. None of it has to happen. I always kind of go back to that video that it's one of my favorite videos on YouTube called The Tiny Dot. And it just goes to show you, it highlights just how powerful we are and how not powerful the elite are. But it's all in perception. They make you perceive that you have no power, that there's no possible way that you could ever defeat them. And to be quite honest with you, as long as you or we continue to let ourselves be divided by these Satanists, and that's the only thing I can call them, they're freaking just evil to the core, then we're not going to be able to win the battle. We've kind of got to see through all the divide and conquer tactics. Like, for example, race, income, all these kind of things, they divide us. Whether or not you're a Republican or you're a Democrat or you're a libertarian, then none of that crap matters.
Yeah, they've worked
human.
very well.
We're human beings, and we were given rights by our Creator. Now, you may not believe in God the way I believe in God, and you shouldn't believe in God the way I believe in God, because everybody's beliefs are unique unto yourself. So like what I believe isn't going to be what you believe, isn't going to be what Tim believes, isn't going to be what Popeye believes. Very, very, very sad that we allow ourselves to be coerced and corrupted the way we have been for so long. And shame on these prior generations. Shame on them for allowing this to go unchecked for so long.
Yeah,
so
for people for buying into it, for crying out loud.
What's that?
I say, and for people for still buying into it, for all these years.
Absolutely.
This divide is there, as you said, and in this country, it's become more prevalent in the last probably generation, I think, in the last 10 to 20 years. But politics, the liberal versus conservative, it's just nuts. And folks, all it's doing is dividing the country, and that's exactly what they want. They're just sitting back and they're laughing, and we've got them right where we want them. It's time to give up the left-right political trap. Start seeing things right down the center. Start seeing things, what's best for all of us. It doesn't have to be what's good for the left or what's good for the right. It's like, what's going to work for society? It seems a pretty simple concept.
Yep. The producer here is telling me that, people are surrendering their birthright. And it's true, and that's liberty. Yeah, it's funny. And they always bring up this enemy. The Founding Fathers warned us of this, that this country is going to fall, not because of some external force, but because of men from within that are conspiring to just destroy it. And it's true. That's what's happening. It's not, folks, who are the terrorists? If you look at it from a world's perspective, who are the terrorists in the world? Is it Iran? No. Who are the imperialist power? It's us. I mean, that's really what it's all about, Tim. We're the ones trying to tell people how to live. We're the ones saying, oh, no, we're promoting freedom and democracy. Look on Freedom Link Radio, we brought up a little index called the Freedom of Press Index, right? Now, our First Amendment is supposed to protect freedom of the press. It's a right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a privilege. It's a right. And so we should rank number one on the freedom of the press. Hands down, all the time. You know what we ranked, folks? 47th. 47th in the world we ranked on freedom of the press.
We took quite a dump in 1 year, didn't we?
Oh, man, a massive dump. We dropped like 27 places.
Yeah.
Because of the Occupy movement, because we, the people of this country, decide to go and speak out against the BS that's happening in this country. And the powers that be say, oh, no, you can't do that. No, we want you to listen to the mainstream media. So all these alternative media people that are going to cover this, that have their blogs, that have sites like Intel Hub or Federal Jack or Orion Talk Radio or what have you, they're being arrested for merely videotaping what these jackbooted thugs are doing. So, of course, Reporters Without Borders, who did this ranking, dropped the United States 27 places to 47th. And I mean, just unbelievable stuff.
Especially because we're one of the biggest media societies in the world. I mean, that's what's glaring and alarming in that stat. I mean, for crying out loud.
No, you're absolutely right. So, folks, understand this and ask yourself this. Are we free? And do you know what freedom is? Because I can tell you right now, we are not free. And anytime you hear these talking heads, these idiot bureaucrats in Washington that say, oh, well, we need to go over there because we're protecting your freedom. And to all you active duty military out there that think you're defending freedom, we are hardly free anymore. So if we're not free, then what were and are you defending? Well, Tim, that was a quick 45 minutes.
Man,
it's gone, but all of a sudden I want a boogie for some reason, and I can't figure out why. Oh, it's Popeye's exit music. That's what it is. Folks, tune in to Down the Rabbit Hole this Sunday evening from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern, and Freedom Link Radio follows that at 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Hey, good night, everybody.